Chapter 6 Miss Honey Takes a Class by Roald Dahl. Miss Honey could not resist the temptation of exploring further the mind of this astonishing child. "Well," she said, pretending to address the whole class, "let us see if any of you have begun to learn to spell. Hands up, anyone who can spell cat." 3 hands went up. They belonged to Lavender, Nigel, and Matilda. "Spell cat, Nigel." Nigel spelled it. Miss Honey now decided to ask a question that normally she would not have dreamt of asking the class on its first day. "I wonder," she said, "whether any of you 3 have learned how to read a whole group of words when they are strung together in a sentence?"
"I have,"
Nigel said.
"So have I,"
Lavender said. Miss Honey went to the blackboard and wrote the sentence. "I have already begun to learn how to read long sentences." She had purposely made it difficult, and she knew that there were few 5-year-olds who would be able to manage it. "Can you tell me what that says, Nigel?" she asked.
"That's too hard,"
Nigel said. "Lavender?"
"The first word is I,"
Lavender said. "Can any of you read the whole sentence?" Miss Honey asked.
"Yes,"
Matilda said. "Go ahead," Miss Honey said. Matilda read the sentence without any hesitation. "That really is very good indeed," Miss Honey said, making the understatement of her life. "How much can you read, Matilda?"
"I think I can read most things, Miss Honey,"
Matilda said.
"although I can't always understand the meanings."
Miss Honey walked smartly out of the room, but was back in 30 seconds carrying a thick book. She opened it and placed it on Matilda's desk. "This is a book of humorous poetry," she said. "See if you can read that one aloud." Matilda began to read.
"An epicure dining at Crewe found a rather large mouse in his stew. Cried the waiter, 'Don't shout and wave it about, or the rest will be wanting one too.'"
Several children saw the funny side of the rhyme and laughed. Miss Honey said, "Do you happen to know what that particular type of poetry is called?"
"It's called a limerick,"
Matilda said. "That's a lovely one. It's so funny." "It's a famous one," Miss Honey said. "A witty limerick is very hard to write," she added. "They look easy, but they most certainly are not."
"I know,"
Matilda said.
"I've tried quite a few times, but mine are never any good."
"You have you?" Miss Honey said, more startled than ever. "Well, Matilda, could you try to remember one for us?"
"Well,"
Matilda said, hesitating.
"I've actually been trying to make up one about you, Miss Honey, while we have been sitting here."
"About me?" Miss Honey cried. "Well, we've certainly got to hear that one, haven't we?"
"I don't think I want to say it, Miss Honey."
"Please tell it," Miss Honey said. "I promise I won't mind."
"I think you will, Miss Honey, because I have to use your first name to make things rhyme, and that's why I don't want to say it."
"I insist upon hearing this limerick," Miss Honey said, smiling one of her rare smiles. "Stand up and recite it." Reluctantly, Matilda stood up and, very nervously, she recited her limerick.
"The thing we all ask about, Jenny, is surely there cannot be many young girls in the place with so lovely face. The answer to that is not any."
Miss Honey's pleasant face blushed a brilliant scarlet. "Why, thank you, Matilda," she said. "Although it is not true, it is really a very good limerick. I must try to remember it." Lavender said.
"It's good. I like it."
"It's true as well," a small boy called Rupert said.
"Of course it's true,"
Nigel said. Already the whole class had begun to warm towards Miss Honey, although as yet she had hardly taken any notice of any of them except Matilda. "Who taught you read, Matilda?" Miss Honey asked.
I just sort of taught myself, Miss Honey.
"And have you read any books all by yourself? Any children's books, I mean?"
I've read all the ones that are in the public library in the high street, Miss Honey.
"And did you like them?"
I liked some of them very much indeed,
Matilda said.
but I thought others were fairly dull.
"Tell me one that you liked,"
I liked The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe.
Matilda said.
I think Mr. C.S. Lewis is a very good writer, but he has one failing. There are no funny bits in his books.
"Do you think that all children's books ought to have funny bits in them?" Miss Honey asked.
I do.
Matilda said.
Children are not so serious as grown-ups, and they love to laugh.
Miss Honey was astounded by the wisdom of this tiny girl. She said, "And what are you going to do now that you have read all the children's books?"
I'm reading other books.
Matilda said.
I borrow them from the library. Mrs. Phelps is very kind to me. She helps me to choose them.
At that moment, the bell in the corridor sounded for the end of class. Adapted from Matilda. You are never too young to enjoy stories and to learn to read.